one evening, I was driving home from work, and I got a phone call from a guy that had just moved from North Carolina. And he said, Erica, I know we have a Burmese python here. There's no way we're going to catch it. You got to come help us. So I thought, yes, I'm getting a call to action, and I drive on down there in my Honda, and here's this big old snake that's stretched out across both lanes. And a couple guys just standing there with their hands in their pockets looking very nervous, like, what do we do? What's the next step? And I parked my car, went over to talk to them for a moment, and I showed them how to catch a python, what to do.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing in the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, coming to you from the Lance Chuck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio, Master Captain Angie Scott.
All right, everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast. Still down here in sunny Southwest Florida. Got the Lance Chuck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio here, and I've got a special guest. I love these in-person interviews. It's been so much fun. A special guest that came up today from Naples, but usually she's also down in the Everglades. Erica Holla, a.k.a. Holla.
That's right, Holla.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Angie. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming out to the studio. And it's a beautiful day, so we're sitting outside as usual. It seems like every day down here is just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm on the Truman Show sometimes. Like every day is the same. It's just perfect. So
yeah, you don't have to look at the weather in the wintertime. It's pretty much always like low 70s to mid 80s and just beautiful, breezy, and it's nice. So
I don't know a whole lot about you. Just disclaimer for our audience, you're going to be learning just as much about Erica as I am pretty much. But one of my recent guests recommended that I get in touch with her while we're down here and have her on the show. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I was like, heck yeah, need to have her on the show. So so tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you from here? Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm not from Florida. Okay. I've been living down here on and off for the last 5 years. But really what drew me to Florida was a job. I was working with the National Park Service, and I was working at Big Cypress National Preserve, which butts up next to Everglades National Park. Okay. So I came down here the winter of 2017, right after Hurricane Irma. And so I came down here right after a hurricane and started working at the national park, learning about the amazing bird life we have here, learning about the wetlands, catching snook, catching tarpon, and just the first month I was here, I knew I found someplace really, really special. So over the years, I would work a couple months in Florida, then I would go back to Alaska. I worked up there for a couple months during the summer.
Quite a difference.
Both still have mosquitoes, and they both still have great blue herons and ospreys. So, I found like some common ground between the two states. But I kept coming back to Florida. And finally, in 2020, I got a full-time job, and I decided I'm staying in Florida. This is going to be home for a while, and I'm really glad that I've stuck it out here. Yeah. It's just been marvelous.
Okay, so what do you do now?
So what do I do now? Yeah. I now am a falconer, and I work for a variety of different states, or variety of sites in the state of Florida. A lot of the times I'm working at landfills or sports arenas. We go to a lot of the airports in Southwest Florida as well, and we try to keep those areas free of pest birds like your seagull species, your gull species, keep them free of pigeons, crows, and things like that. Those pest birds can cause some problems with machinery and also public health as well. So primarily it's called abatement falconry.
Okay, interesting. All right, so I don't know a whole lot about that. So
not many people do.
Yeah.
It's a very niche field, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of fell into it about 8 months ago or so, looking on Indeed.com, looking for wildlife jobs.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with catching snakes and alligators and things like that. So I thought, let's look into something wildlife-based here. And there was a job, lo and behold, looking for somebody who's comfortable working with raptors, understands their behavior, their biology a little bit. Uh-huh. And I just completely lucked out getting that gig.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So your main job is just to keep those birds out of hazardous areas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I was just, when I heard you were a falconer, I was like, oh, does she like train falcons?
That's a part of it.
Is that part of it?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the birds that we're getting in are younger birds, and we might be the first person that's there working with them, showing them how to work appropriately with the falconer, how to have that hunting companionship, that hunting relationship. And so we are training a fair amount of the birds as well. Some of them are more of a made bird. They already kind of know what to do. They already know how to work with the falconer. So that makes my job a little easier when you have those more experienced birds, but we are training a fair amount of them as well.
Where do they come from then?
So we do have some birds that we raise at our facilities.
Okay.
And then some of them we've also purchased from other falconers that have said, oh, I don't have the time or the finances to care for this bird anymore. So we try to keep those birds that are already deemed falconry birds, keep them within that falconry community.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there may be a chance you might be able to bring one by, so we'll see. But that would be really cool. If so, maybe we can get a photo, whatever we can do. But anything else you do that you want to talk about in relation to that?
To the birds?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, that's pretty much summing up a lot of it. If you think about, like, the next time you fly out of an airport in Florida, just look around, like, the airstrip and see if there's any gulls sitting around there. Look to see if there's any pigeons, any crows, things like that. Chances are there's not going to be that wildlife because someone like us has come through there and brought that predatory bird through that location several times a week, and we just sort of establish the thought in those gulls that, oh my gosh, there's a bird of prey here. This is not a good place for us to call home. We got to vacate.
Interesting.
So we are at a lot of airports, I would say.
Okay.
And next time you fly.
Something I've never really thought about at an airport. So that's something to think about next time I fly.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a very interesting field. Not a lot of people are aware of it, and I myself have only been aware of it for the last year or so. So it's very fascinating.
Very cool. Well, how did you get into like catching gators?
So when you're working out here in South Florida, you want to learn how to interact with the wildlife. Some wildlife you want to protect, some you need to eradicate. And I started off by helping turtles cross the road and helping make sure that native snakes were off of Tamiami Trail, off of Highway 41. And really, let me talk about the pythons for a little bit, because that's just fascinating to me.
Well, Dana's not here.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about the snakes. So I'm not sure if you're aware of the invasive snake problem that's been ongoing here.
I've kind of heard a little bit about it, but I'm not super familiar about it.
So it's wild. In the mid 70s or 80s, that's when they had their first couple reports of a Burmese python down in the Florida Everglades. Now, whether that was a snake that was released by, a snake owner, or was it a hurricane that ripped through that facility and released a bunch of snakes, we won't quite know what was the first act that released all those snakes into the wild. But now we know that there are thousands and thousands of these Burmese pythons just running rampant through the Everglades. And the only way to really control them is using manpower or woman power. Yeah. They don't really have any native predators out there. You might see a couple photos on the news of a large alligator grabbing a smaller python, or you got to imagine some of the wading birds, your herons and egrets, are able to grab the hatchlings when they're under 2 feet or so. But really, they have no predators, so it's up to us to try to eradicate them. So when I first got hired on as a park ranger, we took a training with FWC, and they taught us how to catch a python. It was wild. The first couple hours of the class, we went through proper snake handling, proper snake ID. You don't want to approach a venomous snake and assume that it's a Burmese python. You're going to get bit. So we have to do a lot of identification and things like that. But at the end of the course, they had, I think, 4 or 5 pythons all bagged up. And the test was to catch one. All they did was just open the knot in the bag, release the python, and it kind of sprung out of the bag, started to sun itself. And then once you started to advance towards it, it had been caught so many times previously being a training snake. It realized, this is my opportunity to escape, and it would start to go for the water, go for the woods, and it was just a frenzy. The first time I tried to catch a snake, figuring out, okay, how do I go for the head? How do I approach this snake appropriately? So they did really great training for all of that year's park rangers.
Yeah.
And after that first interaction with a python, I just thought, this is something that I want to do in my spare time. This is something I want to do on my Friday nights. On my Saturday nights, we often would go look for them in the evening when the ambient air temperature is dropping down a little bit, and the snakes can come out and warm themselves up on the blacktop of the highway. So we'll drive in the evenings and look for them out there. So, the first couple snakes I caught was in 2017, and one evening I was driving home from work, and I got a phone call from a guy that had just moved from North Carolina. And he said, Erica, I know we have a Burmese python here. There's no way we're going to catch it. You got to come help us. So I thought, yes, I'm getting a call to action, and I drive on down there in my Honda, and here's this big old snake that's stretched out across both lanes. And a couple guys just standing there with their hands in their pockets looking very nervous, like, what do we do? What's the next step? And I parked my car, went over to talk to them for a moment, and I showed them how to catch a python, what to do. And I got both my hands around just behind, the neck, right behind the head of the python, locked on, and the body of the snake started to pull back into a bush, into a sea grape bush. And it got its body so wedged back in this bush that I couldn't actually pull it on out. So I let go of the snake. I then said to the two guys, okay, I showed you how to catch it once. Now it's up to you. So we waited out the snake a minute, and it started to come on out of the bushes again. They were too petrified to catch it, so I caught it again and benched it out.
Nice.
This thing ended up being, I think, just shy of 13 feet.
Wow.
So it was a good-sized snake.
That is a good-sized snake.
And that was the first snake that I had really caught on my own, no help needed, and it was amazing.
That's awesome.
So then I learned how to process the snakes, how to skin them, how to preserve the skin, how to turn them into little bits of artwork like that.
Some here. I can maybe take a picture of this so you guys can see it. She brought me a little gift, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's about the only good thing that comes from those pythons is their skin, really. Yeah. Some folks try to eat the meat of the python. I wouldn't. Some people try to eat the eggs. That's not for me. But to each their own, you know. So the python hunting has just been another fun thing to do in the Everglades. And I do it because of the threat to our native wildlife. When I moved here in 2017, I would see 20 or 30 rabbits as I would drive to Naples. It's like a 45-minute drive. I would see tons of rabbits, squirrels, native wildlife. Now in 2023, I hardly ever see a squirrel, hardly ever see a rabbit. So we've lost about 95% of our small mammal population because of those snakes.
Is it starting to get under control, or is it still a huge issue?
I feel like it's coming in control a little bit. We're seeing less snakes being caught, but perhaps that's just because we're eradicating the population along the highway. The Florida Everglades is over 1.5 million acres. Yeah. There's a lot of areas that we can't quite access, a lot of terrain for them just to breed and go rampant. So it is an uphill problem, or, it's going to be a while till we fix it, but we have to keep trying. Yeah. So we're going to keep catching them.
It's awesome that you enjoy it. You definitely fit very well into the adventure side of the podcast, but definitely. You also fit into the angler side.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of fishing down in the Everglades, and you're a guide as well?
So I do have my captain's license.
Okay.
I can operate a
Awesome.
six passenger vehicle, and I was a guide up in Montana this last summer doing some freshwater fishing.
Okay.
And I have a desire to perhaps bring that guiding lifestyle down here to Florida. There's a lot of competition.
Yes.
But it's definitely been something in the back of my mind for a long time. I love teaching. I love education. So guiding is another part of that, right? Showing people the water, how to fish, how to cast.
Seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah, maybe down the road.
You do fly fishing too?
I do.
Conventional, or just fly, or both?
Both. I do both, cool. Yeah. So I started spin fishing when I was a little kid. And then right before the pandemic, actually, I saw on Mangrove Outfitters, where I met you. Yeah. At Mangrove Outfitters, they had a women-only fly casting clinic that was going on. Okay. And that showed up on Instagram. And I just thought, yes, this is perfect. I'm going to go for it. I had thrown a Tenkara rod before, which is, just casting out a little bit of line. And I thought, that was fun, but I want to learn the real application of fly fishing. And it was from Captain Christina, who you had on your podcast just a couple weeks ago. She's awesome. She was leading the fly casting clinic, and she was the first person to really teach me how to double haul and things like that, and became great friends with her, and so we started kind of fishing together on the weekends, and I think I caught my first redfish with her, and just had some great memories of fly fishing and finding a new challenge and appreciation in that sport. And I put away the spinning rod for 2 years. I don't think I picked up a spinning rod. And so I've been...
Say that's kind of what you have to do when you're learning fly casting, because otherwise it's too tempting to pick up that spinning rod in certain situations.
Exactly. And to say, I'm going to be able to throw so much farther with this.
Yeah.
But now the opposite's happened, where I'll pick up a spinning rod, and if I cast a lure in the water and it makes some sort of a sound, I think, that's so loud, that's going to scare everything away. Where's my fly rod? Where's my tiny little fly? So I've definitely been more of a fly fisherman the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can see how that's an advantage down here where you've got this crystal clear water, especially if you're sight fishing and you don't want to spook the fish. That fly fishing can be a huge advantage. So
definitely.
Awesome that you've taken up that as well, and now you can do whatever you need to do.
Exactly, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
A little bit of both. And what I love about fly fishing too is also the creativity side of things. I learned how to start tying my own flies, and that has been just a blast. After a long day on the water, you think, okay, that fly, I really liked how that worked, but what if we had a little bit more razzle dazzle, a little more shine to it, and you can go back home and create flies the way you want them. So I love the creativity side.
Very cool.
Too.
And I imagine you had a great time at that fly night. I wasn't able to stay the whole time, but it looked like a good time. I saw pictures, and
it's
a great turnout, too.
Yeah, most people I've ever seen at our fly tying night. We had to get an extra table in and extra chairs, so it's neat to see how that community is growing as well. I was intimidated the first time I walked into a fly shop by myself, and now I feel right at home. I can walk right on in, know exactly what I'm looking for, be able to talk to the guys behind the counter, and I would say Mangrove and those fly tying nights have definitely been a crucial part of that.
Yeah, it seems like a really great shop there. We kind of we came down and did the Redfish Roadie road trip a few years ago, and they were part of that, so I already was kind of introduced, and so it's kind of cool how everything happened back together. So I've had just an absolute blast down here. I think you might be my last interview until we have to go back home, so thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share? Do you have anything coming up that you want to mention? You have boats as well.
I do, yeah.
You want to talk about the boats at all?
Sure.
Okay.
So I bought my first boat in 2020, right around the pandemic. And first boat, I had no clue what I was really doing. I bought a boat with a tiller motor, and I think I drove a tiller when I was like 12 out on the lake, stuff like that. But this was a big decision for me to get a boat. I wanted to be able to have that sense of independence out on the water and not have to call people constantly saying, hey, can we go on your boat? Hey, can you pull me around? Or things like that. I was tired of always asking to get on boats, and I decided I wanted my own. And since I purchased it, it has been a huge, huge, huge way for me to learn about maintenance and learn about trailer maintenance and working on my motor. I just recently repainted the whole bottom of it, stripped it all of its old paint, put all new gel coat on it, and it's just been another way for me to keep learning and just keep challenging myself. So it's been really fun. I have a 15-foot Johnson skiff. It came from Tennessee, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a freshwater boat, and it's a 1981 hull. So I like that it's not a brand new shiny boat out there on the water, but it's had some adventures.
It's got some character.
It definitely does, yeah. And I got a little trolling motor on the front, so if it's just me fishing, I can go real quiet, real slow with the trolling motor, and I can also put a push-pull on it, too. So I can do a little bit of everything, which is fun.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
A little bit more involved when you're in salt water as far as maintenance and things like that goes. So it's a whole other element, I'm sure.
Salt is always your enemy. If there's always something to replace, always something that's rusting out and whatnot, but it's fun, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I love your spirit and just all the things that you do and getting into different adventures and always learning, and that's what life is all about.
Yep.
So
got to keep pushing yourself, keep learning, and
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I know you're on Instagram, so people can go follow you there.
That's right.
A lot of fishing adventures on there, so everybody go check that out. What is your handle?
Oh, it's Everglades Erica, Erica, all together.
Awesome. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Anywhere else? Is that the main place?
Yeah, that's my main place. Okay. And if I get a guiding industry up and going, who knows? Maybe I'll put a new Instagram up there.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming out and for probably being my last guest. Unfortunately, we're sad to go back home, but we'll be back next year. So we'll have to fish together next year for sure.
I'll get you out on the little skip next year for sure.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.